Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very excited to log in and give you some trip updates today. If I have not had the chance to meet you face to face yet, my name is Stephanie Long, and I am the group leader for our 2025 Vienna, Budapest, and Prague trip. I'm so excited to give you just a few updates, a few to-dos, and to address some of the questions that I have received. And so we'll go ahead and get started. So first, regarding our trip, we currently have 27 individuals signed up to travel with us, which is very exciting. Of those 27 travelers, we have 19 students who are freshmen at Geyer, 4 district employees, and 4 parents of travelers. I did want to make sure that all of us had bookmarked this travel site that I've compiled for you. And this is going to be our central hub of information as we get closer to departure. So there's a few things on it right now. Miss Yamashita, one of our chaperones, has put together a Google map that students can interact with to see where we're going. You can review the trip itinerary, look at some travel favorites. Parents often like this frequently asked questions hub. We have a little bit of a bio for the different chaperones that are signed up to come. But once we get things like our flight information and pick a meeting spot at the airport, I don't want you to have to be looking back through emails. So and as well as emailing, will upload everything here for us. And as a reminder, for anyone who was not at the enrollment meeting in September, we did chat about how our trip is not associated with Denton ISD. I know that's kind of confusing because I'm a Geyer teacher. The other chaperones are, have worked at Geyer in some capacity. 3 of the 4 of us still work at Geyer, and we're taking Geyer students. But any questions or issues you have should be communicated with EF directly as a company, because while we are going with the support and excitement of our administration, it's not a Geyer High School field trip like a band trip would be. Okay, so looking at the screen here, my priorities today are to talk about tour dates, passports, student rooming, tipping and money tips, and go over a few traveler to-dos, as well as give you a sneak peek at what you will be hearing from me later this semester. So the first thing I wanted to remind everybody of is we will be traveling for 7 days within the window on the screen. So we will leave sometime June 16th or after, and we will return June 28th or prior. And I did request originally June 19th through the 25th, but we do not have our exact departure and return date yet. The reason EF does it this way, and I know it makes it very complicated and annoying for all of us trying to plan summer family trips and all of the things. EF works with various group sizes. So they have groups as small as 4 students, and then they have groups as large as 80 to 100 students. And so they consolidate trips if there is interest in a trip, but it would make more sense, for example, for a group of 25 to join a group of 10. They will share charter buses with another campus. They will share restaurant reservations with another campus. They would share a tour director with another campus. But on the chance we do get consolidated, I have submitted and received approval that our students would not share rooms with students of another campus. That is just something that is for my personal comfort as a chaperone, as a commitment to our parents to make sure that our students are doing what they are supposed to. That is one of the boundaries I have in an international trip, and EF was happy to honor that. So, like I said, as soon as I have more information on this, I will make sure to email it out that day. But for now, just make sure you mark off June 16th through June 28th as possible travel dates. Moving forward, the most important item right now is collecting everyone's passport information. So for those who have not submitted passport information on their traveler's EF account, I will show you how to do that in a moment, and you would have received an email from me on January the 6th. If you did not receive that email, it means that you've already uploaded your passport information. And so if you have uploaded your passport information, thank you for doing that. But we're not quite off the hook yet. What I would like to request is that every parent of every traveler double checks their student's EF account with passport in hand and make sure that the name on the passport and the name on the EF account are exact, So no nickname should be on the student EF account. We want to make sure that birth dates are exact, and we want to make sure that the gender on the passport is reflected in the student's EF account. So one thing we do to try to help this out is we collect photocopies of student passports early on so that I also have a set of eyes that can be looking over the passport information. After March 1st, if a student has to go in and change any of this information, for example, if their legal name is Caitlin, but they go by Katie and they put Katie in their EF account, this can affect the name on the tickets that EF purchases for us. So we like to double check and just make sure everything looks right. One thing we also want to make sure of is that if a student has a middle name, it needs to show up exactly as it does on their passport. So I appreciate you all helping us accomplish this. Getting this done this early helps us to avoid any additional fees for your student later on or stress for your family. The photocopies will be stored off-site, not on campus. I lock them in a safe at my house and we pull them back out when it's time for us to travel. That way, in case a student were to misplace their passport on a trip, didn't happen with us last year, but it has happened before. This makes it much easier to prove their identity if a chaperone is also carrying an extra copy of that student's passport. Okay. If you do need to submit your passport information, it takes about 2 minutes to do so. Logging into your EF account, you'll see a submit info button and you will just simply follow the prompts on the screen. All of us will have seen a new icon generate recently that says travel requirements. And you're welcome to go and review that, but rest assured that I'm in weekly contact with our EF team and specialist. So if there's additional documentation that we will need, they will communicate that with me. As of yesterday, when I met with them, all they are wanting right now is our passports. So this will give us information, for example, if between one country and a second country, travelers may need proof of accommodation. So that's one of the necessities for us. That will already be handled because chaperones will have a copy of the hotel address, and students at that point will have downloaded an EF app that shows their accommodations as well. So no action is required here on our part right now. Okay. Regarding paying off the trip, you can easily log into your student's page, review their itinerary here on the left, review any to-do items, and then make sure that you are on top of payments. I will say there's a to-do list at the end here, so if you're feeling a little overwhelmed, don't worry. I have it all listed at the end of this presentation. But if your student is on a manual plan, all of the balance for their account needs to be paid by March 1st. Or if that's not realistic, you can switch them to an automatic payment plan prior to March 1st. This is a fundraising page that automatically is tied to your student's account. Okay, so it should look just like this. I know last year we had many of our students walking dogs, babysitting, trying to contribute to a portion of their trip. And so while GoFundMe is great, and I've used it before for friends and other circumstances, this account is great because it ties directly to their EF account and every penny goes towards their balance. So if your student is fundraising, if they're writing letters to family, to ask, for contributions, this is the link or the page I would share with them. I did want to mention rooming early in this process and let you know how that is going to work. If you're an adult coming with us on the tour, you received an email from me earlier this week with your options for rooming and possible upgrades. The default for adults is that we will be room 2 to a room based on the gender marker on our passports, though you can upgrade to a single room for a fee. For students, the default is 3 to 4 students to a room based on the gender marker on their passports. If for whatever reason you have any concerns, please let me know. We want to make sure that your students are as comfortable as possible. And I will send out a Google form to students before departure asking for their roommate preferences. The one thing I want everyone to know early on is that as a group leader, I know which hotels we will be staying in, but I don't necessarily know which rooms are going to be rooms of 3 and which are 4 till the day we check into the hotel. So last year, our tour director would hand me a packet and say, we have 5 rooms of 4 and 3 rooms of 3. Go ahead and figure it out. So I would then go through with the chaperones with the roommate request form next to me and try to honor as many requests as I could. But it's unlikely that your student will get to be with their, their closest friend every single time. I do try to honor requests as much as possible. And if a student doesn't get their close friends on night 1, we try to make it up to them on night 3. That being said, a lot of students last year who approached and were like, please make sure I'm with my best friend. This will be ruined if I'm not with them. By day 2 or 3, a lot of them came up and said, I like everybody, and this is part of the adventure. Put me with whoever. I'm really enjoying getting to know new people. So right now, there's no action needed on anyone's part unless you have a concern about this default roommate. Okay, the next order of business is how will we handle money on tour? So obviously, we've already reviewed how you can see the balance you owe for the total trip, but like we shared in the enrollment meeting, students are also expected to contribute to our tip fund, and then they also should be prepared to bring a little bit of spending money for each day. Okay, so I will be collecting a total of $85 from each traveler in May. That's for students and adults. And this money is going to be given to our tour director to thank them for their services. They're with us 24/7 for an entire week. From the time we get off the plane to the time we get back on a plane, they guide us everywhere. This will go to our bus driver, which we may have several. This will go to our local guides. And so this just helps us to make sure that we are being good guests and appreciating our representatives appropriately. The reason we collected ahead of time is because, as you can imagine, if we have 27 people on these busy roads and we have just gone through a tour and we are in a city center, it's not the safest idea to have a lot of freshmen pulling out their wallets with all of their money and all of us trying to say, okay, we need the equivalent of $6 for each traveler. Then we're trying to make change. It's very awkward. It can hold us up. And ultimately, we don't want our travelers flashing their wallets around in a crowded area. Collecting this money early allows us as chaperones to convert the money to the appropriate currencies before we leave. And then we are able to separate the tips into envelopes so that as we get there, we have the appropriate amount of money for each guide. Regarding spending money, EF recommends that your student should budget to spend the equivalent of $30 to $60 per day in additional spending money. Last year, a lot of the students did not need that amount. So it really depends on what you and your family are wanting your student to experience on this trip. So the main thing they'll need money for each day is one meal that EF does not provide that they will eat during free time. So as you can imagine, if we are in a busy area, there's going to be McDonald's, and then there's going to be sit down, more authentic places. A lot of our students did spend quite a bit on snacks at the airport or coffee at the airport. Some of them wanted to bring back a souvenir for every family member. So we ask that you start having those conversations with your student now so that you both have an understanding of what expenses you expect them to accumulate. We do not recommend that students bring all of their spending money in cash on day 1 of the trip, because as you can imagine, when you're traveling internationally, there's a lot of movement, there's a lot of chaos. We don't want any student to drop their spending money for an entire week. Most places do accept card payments, and although there is an additional fee, we can always accompany a student to an ATM machine about midway through the trip. So a lot of this is not things we need to talk about till later, but I did want to have this conversation early so that you all can budget accordingly. EF does recommend a group called Till Financial. I will let you read through this screen and see if that would be a good fit for your family. But some of our parents did choose to use this last year and they were a fan. Okay. So a couple of things that you can expect from me before departure. I will send another pre-recorded meeting after the March 1st deadline, likely after I receive more information about our final flights. In the 3 weeks before departure, we will have what's called Europe Camp for our students. And during this camp, they go through different rotations with each chaperone, which is nice because we get to know them all a little more. And we go over safety. We go over spending in a foreign country. We go over how to communicate with chaperones and what to do if you start feeling sick. And we call this day Europe Camp. We don't have the date yet. It'll be determined once some end of school year dates are finalized for the school. I want to make sure we have air conditioning while we are here in the building as the biggest focus. And that evening, we will invite parents to come to a final pre-departure meeting where we will go through everything with a little bit more detail before we actually depart. I also hold optional packing Zoom calls for students and parents to hop on and off as needed in the week before takeoff. That way, you know, all the things that we don't think to ask until we're physically packing, they have somebody that they can talk to about that. So here's our final to-do list. By March the 1st, we want passport information in the EF portal. I'd like to request 2 copies of student passports. And if you don't have a copy machine, students are welcome to bring their passport with them to our student meeting on February 13th, and I can make a copy for them here. If you have any requests for adult or student rooming requests, I need those by March 1st, excuse me. I'm going to do health and medical forms for everybody at a later date, but if your student has any accessibility needs that EF would want to be aware of in order to book hotels, or in order to be aware of beforehand, please let me know now. If you're on the manual payment plan, please pay off your balance by March 1st or switch to an automatic payment. And if any other friends or parents want to join, March 1st is the deadline for enrollment. And after that point, there are excessive fees, and it's considered on an availability and case-by-case basis by EF. So at that point, when they start buying our airline tickets and booking hotels, it can be really difficult to have fluctuations and additions to our trip. Other things to keep in mind, our tipping money will be collected later in May. And our next student social gathering will be in my classroom, J146 at February 13th, on February 13th at 4:15. Aside from that, the only other topics, and some of this I'll talk to students about at that meeting, are whether students want to opt in to getting a t-shirt together. And I'm also going to ask students who are really interested in getting to know everybody if there would be any student volunteers to coordinate some out of school social events for our travelers to get to know each other a little better. So those are the things that you can expect to be hearing from me on in the coming months. As always, I am happy to answer any questions. I know this was a lot of information, and I look forward to seeing you all soon.